Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Ben Lack. I'm the founder and CEO of Interrupt Media. Really appreciate you joining us. I think we've got a great masterclass session for you guys. I'm joined by my good friend James Niehaus, who's the VP of Growth and Strategy at Funnel Envy. But before we get started, I want to just go over a couple of quick housekeeping items and say hello to all of you. So if you can please type in your name and where you're based today into the question box, I would love to say hi while we go through the housekeeping. So Rob from New York City, thanks so much for being with us today. Chelsea from Washington, D.C., really appreciate you joining us. Mark is joining us from, it looks like Orlando, Florida. Awesome. Hey, Mark, thanks for being with us today. We've also got Dave, who's joining us from Walnut Creek. I'm actually pretty close to you, Dave. I'm calling in from Mill Valley. James, where are you today?
San Ramon, so I'm also pretty close to the both of you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. We have Dan, who's joining us from Houston, Texas. Sally is joining us from Phoenix, Arizona. Emily is joining us from also Texas. Curious where else in Texas? That's where I'm from. And Brian is also joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. So wonderful. So if you're just joining on, thanks so much for being with us. We are going to be recording today's session and walking you guys through how to use data to optimize revenue generation. So the quick background on Interrupt Media, and James, I think we'll have you give your quick background on Funnel Envy when we get to your part of the presentation, is that we're a full service digital marketing agency where we really focus on helping our B2B clients drive more leads and turn those leads into pipeline. And I'm really excited about presenting with James because Funnel Envy has a lot of experience in turning data into revenue. So what you're going to learn today are a number of things, and what we're hopeful that you'll do throughout the session is answer our poll questions, shoot us questions. We want to make this time as useful as an informative for you. But what we're going to focus on in the presentations that we have are the following: how to target your ideal customer profile so that you can get the most out of your outreach, how to solve the data issues that you have within your existing tools, and smart ways to retain and acquire additional data that may not necessarily be the demographic data or firmographic data that you could typically capture in like other data exercises, but also that first party data that you're going to want to have as well. And then what to do with the information that you're actually given, and how to leverage data science to really inform your decision making so that you can get the most ROI for the kinds of campaigns that you're running, and then how to, again, to activate your first party data to drive additional revenue. So before we jump into the presentation, my first presentation, I'd love for you to please participate in this first poll question. And James, I'm going to be curious to see what you think, what you make of these answers. But the first question we have here is, how much confidence do you have that your CRM has high quality data? And sorry, we apologize, it's not select all apply, just pick one. And so the choices are not confident, somewhat confident, extremely confident, or you're not sure. So if you're not confident, that means that you really have no idea what's going on, or have a little bit of what's going on. Somewhat is you've got some processes in place, and extremely confident is you've really got your stuff together. So James, the poll shows that 75% are not confident in the quality of their data. And so I think this is really interesting. We see this a lot when we speak to our clients about this. Is this similar to what you see when you guys are talking to your own accounts?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially with CRM, some of it's going to be human entered by the sales teams. So it always raises some questions on quality of collection and consistency of collection. But yeah, not surprised there.
So I'm going to launch the second poll, and this will be the last poll before we get into the deck. What other channels are you leveraging first-party data in? So select one of the following: email attribution, direct mail, website, paid ad campaigns, or other. James, why don't you give us your definition of what you would call first-party data, so that we make sure that everybody kind of has the context for what to choose.
Yeah, so first-party data is that unique data that you have from your direct interactions with your prospects and customers, right? So this is stuff that, like we described, lives in your CRM from your sales interactions, your marketing interactions. I often think of them living on your website data collection, your CRM and marketing automation tools, as well as your marketing databases. But what's important about first-party data is that it's unique to you as far as that context about visitors and users. So it's a very, powerful data set, and, companies have shown that they can generate high amounts of valuation from being able to really attract large numbers of users and have them engage and provide data, about them to the brand.
Awesome. So what we are saying from the folks that are joining us is that also most of the folks are using first-party data in email, which is what we see as well. I mean, most folks are saying that email is a pretty quick and easy ROI, but I'm excited to see that we do have somebody on website, because I think that for many of you that are choosing the email, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for you in these other channels, and we're going to speak to a few of these as part of our presentations. So let me get back to the deck. Bear with me one second. Okay, so I want to start by talking about how does the quality of data optimize your revenue generation. And when you're thinking about revenue at a high level, and how you're going to run your marketing department, the insights that you glean from your data are really going to drive what kinds of decisions you need to make to get the types of outcomes that you want. And all of this really starts with how good your data is. And there's a lot of ways that you're capturing data today. You're capturing data from the form fills that your prospects and clients fill out. Many of you may work with third-party data providers like a Discover.org or a ZoomInfo or Clearbit or Intricately or other types of data providers to give you interesting data to leverage. Many of you may be building lists and just like scraping the internet to try to get stuff off of LinkedIn Sales Navigator or other company websites to learn as much as you can, not only about your accounts, but also the people that work at those target accounts. And because all those different data sources come from different places, they obviously all have different variations of the quality. And what we've found is that this is really a big circle, and it all just kind of continues to impact one another. The better the data, the better the insights. The better the insights, the better decision making and the outcomes. And once you have those outcomes, you can now go get more data or leverage the data to then do your next versions of insights. So the question is, why does all this matter? And the reason is because when you're marketing to your target accounts, you really want to make sure that you're personalizing their experience as much as you can. And there's a term that we like to use called ideal customer profile, or ICP, which is really the characteristics of your best customer, whatever that kind of means to you, and figuring out how to speak to that best customer as accurately and as specifically as you can. So I want to get tactical in telling you how you can do that. And so the suggestions that we have here are, if you don't really know who your ICP is, run a 12-month analysis out of your Salesforce instance or your CRM and look at who were the people that you ended up selling to in the closed won, closed lost, and open deals. Who was added in those contact roles? What was their title? and what was the role in the decision-making process? Were they decision makers? Were they champions of some kind? Were they blockers of some kind? And check and filter that information by the different segments you have. Some of you may be doing segmentation by company size, like small, medium business versus mid-market or enterprise. Some of you may do it by industry. Others of you may also layer in some type of geolocation, like US or the Southeast or California or something like that. And then also look at your velocity from the time that the opportunity created to the time that it closed. If you can get this kind of data and have confidence as you're mining it to help you better understand who your ideal customer profile is, then you're really going to be able to spend time better understanding what their pain points are, how you solve their pain, and why you're different than other people trying to solve their pain, so that you can personalize their experience as much as possible. Now, how do you solve these data quality issues? Many of you have just said on the poll that you don't have very much confidence in the data that you have. There's a couple things to consider. Third-party data enrichment tools, first off, there's no silver bullet. Anything that you do, there's going to be some data quality issues. What's going to be important is that you establish the right process and tools so that you can ensure that you get as high a data quality as you can for the things that matter. We are fans of using third-party data enrichment tools to help you capture that data. These companies spend a lot more time and resources ensuring that firmographic and demographic information is as accurate as possible for the accounts that you want to target. They may not have as much information on some of the psychographic information or specific things around their budget, the authority, the need, or the timeline, which are going to be things that you're going to need to build into your sales or marketing process so that you can acquire that data, those data points and insights, and again, make sure that you can personalize the sales process. But if you already are doing third-party data enrichment tools, definitely make sure that you're running your contacts through some type of a tool like a Never Bounce. There's other tools like Never Bounce out there that really ensure that the data you have when you're, especially for emails, don't bounce. In addition, make sure when you're not looking at account or prospect data and you're focusing more on the engagement data, that your data is of high quality as well. So all the tracking pixels that you would use to track data, Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google AdWords, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any other type of retargeting tools that you may be using, pixels for your marketing operations, pixels for your A/B tools, any of that kind of stuff. It's easier to manage through Google Tag Manager, but definitely if you haven't QA'd those pixels in a while, track them and then create a document, like a Word document, that documents all the pixels that you have, where they all live, what they're supposed to do. And for things like Google Analytics, if you set up goal tracking, document what each of those goals are for and when they were established into GA, so that you can go back, because sometimes people are going to leave the business and bring that institutional knowledge with them when they leave. You can use this centralized document to kind of know what's being tracked, when were updates made to any of the tracking, and what can I pull from this information so that I can get the right kind of insights that I'm looking for. And if you can do that, then your tech stack will really be working in harmony and allow you to get the insights that you're looking for, so that you can run the campaigns that you want. So let me change gears just a little bit here and put my demand gen cap on for just a second, and kind of throw out this idea that when demand gen marketers talk to us about how to drive more leads and turn those leads into pipeline, we typically like to talk to them about taking two parallel paths. The first path is doing the normal traditional marketing to drive leads. And that's more of a volume-based, what's our segment, what's the industry, how big's the company, what do we want to say to those people, and what are the different channels that we want to invest in to drive leads so that we can convert them into opportunities in one business. What's obviously been spoken to most recently in the last couple of years is incorporating and layering on top an account-based marketing plan, where you're taking 10, 20, 50, 100 target accounts, or a specific industry that you want to personalize marketing outreach to, and run very similar channels, but with way more personalized messaging too, so that you can go after those accounts and give yourself a better chance of converting that account into a customer. Both are extremely important in the grand scheme of your overall demand generation strategy. And if you're not doing one or the other, then you should really consider doing both. But what I want to really emphasize is that data that you're now going to get by having a better tech stack that's in harmony is going to allow you to be able to figure out what step in each of these, what area of each of these steps are you really now losing people and saying that they're falling through the cracks. Because the last thing you want to do is spend all this money trying to drive leads or trying to drive target accounts to engage with you, and then only see them fall out of your funnel. And so it's going to be really important to get those insights. And so that's why it's important to leverage your data, or the broader concept of data science, to do this, because you're going to generate your pipeline. You're going to generate more pipeline and faster. You'll get better visibility into predicting the content and campaigns that are going to be most effective. You'll be able to forecast the different types of offers that you can get with prospects and customers. You'll be able to also forecast where you think you'll end up at the end of a given month or quarter if you have the right information. You could even predict the different types of social networks your target prospect's going to engage with, so that you can spend your time running, content and or ad campaigns on those platforms. It'll give you better visibility into optimizing your paid programs, which I know James is going to speak to in a minute, and even your retargeting. Also your SEO, as well as optimizing any of your email marketing nurture sequences by the different stages of which you're building your nurturing. But it's also going to provide you with just stronger accuracy of getting the right message to the right person through the right channel at the right time. With what you can learn about your customer or prospect today, not just about who they are, but also about how they engage with you and other organizations, you have more information than ever to be able to make this a reality. And so making sure that you build patterns in the prospect and customer engagement behaviors will allow you to really make sure that your customers and prospects engage with these the right content and messages at the right stages of the funnel. So I want to kind of set the stage and say, if you're not currently running experiments right now for anything that you're doing, whether it's on the web, in emails, for ads, in webinars, with events, any of the channels that you have, start doing something. And there's a concept called a test plan, which is the idea of building a process around how to run experiments. If you're interested in some test plan templates, shoot me a note, ben@interruptmedia.com, and I'm happy to send you some templates that you can leverage. But very quickly, really before you really flush out your experiments, give yourself some thoughts around this workflow. So ask yourself, what's the thing you really want to answer? Come up with a hypothesis. Gather the data to test your hypothesis. Make sure that you have a decent enough control group to get the insights you're looking for. Analyze your results. Come up with conclusions. Push on the conclusions with folks on your team or the other stakeholders, and then run additional experiments if you're trying to get more from your experiment. I know this is very straightforward and probably seems somewhat mundane, but as somebody who helps teams try to drive more leads, the number of companies that forget to actually run experiments for their own company on any of their channels is rather high. So this is my my plead or my push for you to think about how can you set aside 30 minutes a week, 1 hour a week, to try to run an experiment for your business to see how you can get better lift. So hopefully this has given you a good sense at a high level of how marketing operations and the tech stack can really help you drive the right types of insights that you're looking for so that you can drive more revenue. I'm going to pass this on, this presentation over to James so that he can present, because I think James is going to have some really good insights into how you can acquire that first party data in really effective ways. So James, I think I've just given you the presenter tool, and looks like you're showing your slides now. So James, without further ado, I'll let you take it away. James, I think you're still on mute.
Thank you, Ben. And I was on mute. Great stuff, Ben. I think Ben walked us through kind of a foundational strategy around really how to get your first party data in a position where you can activate it, right? Focusing on data quality, focusing on getting the integrations right, the strategy and plan, and also execution with experimentation to better understand what's working, what's not working. So my quick background is I have maybe spent getting older here, over 20 years in digital, primarily in acquisition, analytics, and personalization kind of roles and programs. So I've often been focused on using data to target and drive experiments, whether it be in email, whether it be on your website, whether it be in paid media, in an effort to acquire and retain more customers. So Ben asked me in this webinar to kind of deep dive on first party data activation. Like I've been doing this for a long time. In my current role at Funnel Envy provides a platform that helps primarily B2B and SaaS companies activate all that data that Ben has described, your first party marketing automation data, whether it be Marketo or Eloqua or any of those other systems in Salesforce, integrating them with various third party tools like firmographics like Demandbase or Bombora, and then activating that. And in my role, we focus mainly on how to activate that to personalize user experiences, primarily on your digital properties. So in my role, I actually work with a number of clients on strategy and execution. So I am helping them run experiments, understanding what's working, what's not working. So I decided to use this portion of my call to kind of walk you through, I would almost say, years of learning about what works and what doesn't work around activating first party data. So I call this really common sense B2B data activation. So really, it's about revenue. So I'm going to walk you through the 5 things that I've learned the hard way about where I recommend focusing your time, where you see the maximum value, what's the right approach, and really, the right way to present to the users and end users. And I'm obviously biased, so I always prefer the website. The reason why I call out the website as really the opportunity for most organizations is that, like Ben referenced earlier, most organizations are mature enough where they're doing nurture email campaigns that are optimized at a segment of users or stages. Same thing with the digital advertising, where typically it's optimized to target certain audience lists, certain targeting criteria. So it's doing the best it can to really target the right user at the right time. Don't get me wrong, it's always a challenge, but you're taking the right steps. What we have seen typically is in most of our experiences with clients is that surprisingly the thing you own, the website, is typically where it's the least leverage as far as first party data. Right? I don't know about yourselves, but for me, more often than not, websites are purely static, right? So it's the same exact experience whether I'm there for the first time or the 100th time, right? So it's just a static, entry message. I don't want to pick on Gusto. That's one quick example, but a typical example of a B2B site where you lead with a web form, and that's your entry point for a lot of your visitors. And when you think about that, it's not necessarily the most ideal objective when you think about who comes to your website in a given day, right? Because it's really built for one segment, right? Those users in the stage of I'm ready to transact or buy. So I'm either going to sign up for your services, do an action, but that's the assumption. You came here and you're ready to go. But we all know that's not reality, right? So typically, in our analysis and our research with our clients, typically, around half your traffic doesn't, or more, is not even that mindset. right? They're returning visitors. They're people in the research stage. They're your active prospects who are, engaging with you in the buying process. Or they're your current customers who may be starting up in your services, trying to expand, or potentially on the risk of churning. So when you take a step back, you realize, your website's really if it's a static ad, it's wrong more than half the time. And that's just a missed opportunity when you think about how much money and activity you're spending to bring traffic to your site. So this is why I'm advocating for changing that approach and applying a stage-based approach to your website experiences. Now, stage-based marketing is very common in most channels. So if you're a market automation professional using, Marketo or Eloqua or Pardot, right? I'm sure you've, even though your data isn't perfect, even though you like to get more integrations in place, I'm gonna guess you have, some concept of a nurture drip campaign. You've targeted out maybe your opt-ins versus your prospects versus your customers. You're doing different types of multi-touch activities, and you're trying to be thoughtful as far as leading them down a certain journey. Now, in other platforms, it's also the case. If you use tools like Drift, they have playbooks that are often built around the same logic of walking people through a sequence of steps that align to a certain journey that's often tied to their relationship with you and their stage in their relationship. And I even seen it done quite commonly in retargeting or display advertising, where you use custom audience lists. You have retargeting based on did they visit the top of the page or the checkout, or they viewed a form, or you exclude customers from that list. But typically, you're applying some level of staging to your campaign, and that typically is the case for most companies, except when it comes to the website. So this is why I say it has the most upside, because it's the most underutilized when it comes to first-party data. And as we all know, first-party data is the most valuable data you have, because it's the actual relationship they have with your brand. Okay, so this, for those who aren't as familiar with stage-based marketing, this is just a very simplistic example, but want to kind of drive the idea home, which is typically you're targeting a certain stage of a segment. So it could be a prospect, it could be a target account that you've identified from your research. It could be someone in an active trial of your SaaS solution or your trial solution, or it could be a customer. And typically in those nurture-based programs, you have different offers you present to them based on what we think is appropriate for where they're at with your business and what stage they may be at. So these are just examples. I would typically refer to your own nurture campaigns for better insights on what was the appropriate stages for your business. Let's take a quick level set for all of us. Typically, nurturing by stage means targeting the right offer based on their stage in the buying process in that journey. And the reason why targeting by stage is so valuable is that, yes, we understand that, job number one for most marketers is about growth. So if I have to pick a single offer for my, say, web experience, I'll lead with a lead gen offer. But as we all know, and the data is always told, and I have some examples here, other stages of users are as valuable, if not more valuable, to the business, especially when it comes to revenue. As you all know, it costs so much more to acquire a new customer than it is to retain them. We all know existing customers are more likely to buy from you again, your additional products and upsells. And obviously, people who are in, say, the trial stages or, say, in the buying process, they're the pipeline. They're your most valuable in-quarter number. So those are all examples of highly valuable segments, which we can clearly track the data that's valuable, that's being ignored. And even if they're not a prospect or a customer, even in our own data, across our client base, we have seen where just from returning visitors, people come to us and come back, they on average convert at twice the rate, whether it's a B2B or B2C. Again, showing that for a lot of visitors, they're not going to try and buy in the first visit. They need to be nurtured. And we know this already from our email and outbound campaigns. That common sense logic is not being applied to the website. So I want to walk you through some common sense ways to achieve that. So before we talk about what does work, I think it's important to talk about what may not be the best approach. Like Ben mentioned, ABM is a very popular strategy for B2B. And I fully embrace it. It makes a lot of sense. You want to align your marketing towards how your buyers align, which is at account level. What I do see as a potential challenge, though, when it comes to doing ABM on the website or making that happen in a kind of a real-time environment is that people tend to gravitate towards kind of the interesting techniques around targeting by industry, targeting by, say, the company name. And like an example here, showing, say, Microsoft in the messaging, because, from the reverse IP and like firmographics tool like Clearbit or Demandbase, they're Microsoft company IP. Or you may know, again, from a firmographics tool, it may belong to certain industries. Now, this is a nice attention-grabbing technique. In certain products and certain companies, they may actually have products built by industry. But for the majority of you, the idea with these techniques is that it drives some engagement, but it doesn't really align or change their intent. Whether I came from one industry or another, I still want to research and learn about your products, do a demo, take action. So while industry and company name are good awareness tools, we haven't seen anything that materially shows that they will improve conversion rate. So the reason why I bring this up is what to potentially maybe not avoid, but maybe not jump all into, is that we've seen challenges where companies go this path. The challenges there are small volumes. It's hard to really get a large enough population to make it valuable to you. Secondly, it's not really well tied to intent, like I mentioned. And people often jump to having to create all these different content pieces to accommodate different industries, different types of personas that may not really, at the end of the day, affect conversion rates. So what I advocate and what I really try to champion is that apply the same stage-based logic to your website that you do with your nurture campaigns, that you do to your targeted outbound campaign. And the simplest way I can describe it is, think about it in terms of anonymous prospect and customer. That to me is the simplest way to see the traffic on my website. Is at the end of the day, all your traffic fits in those three buckets. Ultimately, when people engage with your website, at least the people in the potential buying phases of that, they either come to you anonymous and unknown. They may engage and submit a form, which in that case they're a prospect in your MQL, SQL pipeline process, or they're a customer. So the reason why I advocate going simple with some common sense stages is, as you take a step back, this is a universally recognized kind of stage-based separation, right? So it's evergreen. It's never going to change. Like you may change your offers, you may change some of your businesses, but this is typically going to be persistent across your organization, which means it's great for getting people to buy in and understand it. It's great for making it always on, so you don't always have to experiment and tinker. You can kind of find what works and kind of scale that. It's also great to get executive buy-off. Executives may not fully understand, awareness or interest and desire. Like, how do you classify that? How do you bucket that? Or how do you classify different types of intent? It's really hard to really communicate that. But everyone can wrap their heads around this simple perspective of anonymous prospect and customer. And that's what I'm championing here, is really thinking about applying this simple common sense stage approach to the website. Now, two great examples of going all in on this are Adobe and Salesforce, which is not surprising. They both offer marketing clouds that encourage this behavior. But if you go out of their sites, this is my actual screens. The default homepage looks very different than the user homepage. So if you're a default visitor to those sites, it's more acquisition focused, more demand gen focused. Salesforce tells me the #1 CRM, I should try it today. But if I come back in a logged in state, Adobe is actually surfacing up my existing relationship with them, what products I have, what I've done recently. Salesforce is focused more on education, awareness about the Salesforce value proposition. So they're doing it right, but obviously most of you aren't Salesforce or Adobe. You don't have the tools, the budget, or the tech. So what I'm going to talk about really is how, for the rest of us, what are some ways to make that work? And for me specifically, what we've seen work most across clients is, rather than focusing on an entire website or a whole set of content or a whole set of content around a persona, we champion the idea of focusing on the offer. The reason why, like I said in the write-up, is that your offer is what they've come to the site for. They're coming to research, they're coming to educate, they're coming to take action. Action, at least in a digital sense, is done via CTAs and offers. So rather than trying to focus on personalizing the entire visual experience, the entire interactive experience, focus on what they're going to take action on, which is offers and CTAs. Align those to their intent, so based on their stage and what you know about them. So their stage, their behavior, their first-party CRM data, all that is actionable. So the idea really is, instead of trying to bring it all in and personalize for everything. Focus on the offer to the stage. So I call it, next best offer strategy. But it's as simple as swapping in the hero on, say, the home page or the landing page they land on, based on their stage. And in future slides, I'll talk about some actual examples, but I'll also talk about how to do this personally. And with B2B, if you're in the B2B management site in the world, like most of our clients are, it's actually not that daunting, because most times you have only a couple core pages that really drive all the activity. Typically, it's your home page, one or two of your top landing pages, and probably your pricing page drives the majority of your traffic. One of our larger, publicly traded companies, like 75% of their traffic comes to their homepage and their pricing page. So that also gives you a very focused way to do this without necessarily having to touch dozens of pages, multiple sets of content. You can do this by focusing on the top traffic sources that are really your choke points for conversion. And lastly, as this kind of quick example of a hot jar, heat map shows you, you also don't have to focus on the entire page. As we all know, people don't scroll. That's just the reality. So you can focus on that top above the fold offer. So collectively, this allows you to really take a very complex and broad strategy and narrow it down to a few pages, a couple locations, and a few stages. And that's where we see the maximum return on investment from time and effort. So just a couple examples of clients we work with. Fitch. This is an example where they actually targeted by behavior. So based on interest in certain types of products, based on what we know about them, we can show them different hero messages. In this case, different banners that speak to that product interest. And we saw, again, bottom there, a significant bump in leads. But you don't have to change the banners. Like in this case here with another client, we just changed the banner's relatively the same. Why would we change the actual offer or CTA in the banners? Again, a positive lift. The reason why these things are happening is because we don't necessarily have to change and reskin the site or the experience to be based on their industry or based on what we think is their ideal of a visitor in their industry or profile. They came to engage with you based on offers that are relevant to them. By focusing on just the offers, you really simplify the work you have to do to get it done. So that's why we really advocate for, focus on next best offer. Now we talk about how to do this. The nice thing about this too is that because it's your data, you don't simply have to buy more technology to get this done, right? Because the data already lives in your CRM, your market automation databases, your CDPs if you have one, your marketing databases in general. So the nice thing here is you don't have to buy a lot of new data sources and integrate those. You typically have them. Your biggest challenge isn't that you don't have the data. It typically is you haven't yet activated it. And what I'm going to kind of just quickly touch on is that the nice thing here as well is that you don't, again, have to buy technology per se to make this happen. We're helping a lot of clients do this with their existing marketing tech stack. Now, granted, we offer a platform called Funnel Envy that does allow the end-to-end in a more seamless way, but we recognize that everyone can, invest in technology. So we focus on how to enable this, whether it be through our platform or just through, best practices and recommendations. The idea here, though, is that you don't have to buy new tech. Typically, the tech you already have in place is appropriate and can action most of these use cases in some way, shape, or form. Now, this is kind of the first step in that process, which is segmenting your visitors on your site to match the stages I talked about. So in my example here, I'm talking about anonymous prospect and customer. So how do you do this? The simple thing is that, especially if you're in a B2B or SaaS company where you have logins, people come into your site, you have users who have to log into your site to use your product, whether it be in a trial or a paid service. For you, you're fortunate where you can simply tag them either when they click login, or if your backend team can support you, set a cookie when they hit the login experience. Or if their company matches your firmographics, if they, Clearbit says this company belongs to your customer list, that's multiple ways to kind of start building an advanced segment of customers. So that's a simple way to do customers. Prospects are also straightforward. Prospects typically mean they've engaged with your brand simply by completing a form, downloading content, doing a form submission. So typically you have that, or you might have emails already of prospects who have clicked on emails from your market automation platform. So again, you have a decent segment you can build up, And then anonymous refers to everyone else. So if they don't fit in bucket 1 or bucket 2, they're anonymous. The beauty about this here is that, again, over time, as you get better with customer and prospect identification, you just grow those segments, but you don't necessarily have to constantly build and rebuild new segments or cut them different ways. All you're doing is over time getting better and better, identifying and tagging these users in the appropriate bucket. And now as you get more mature, you can layer on more advanced things like industry, target account, ICP. For some of our clients, we're working on activating their propensity scores around customer fit. But again, you don't have to start with that. Start with just being able to identify your key segments. And again, all of you have some version of this in most cases. Like, granted, publishers may not, but like if you're in the B2B or in e-commerce, these are typically buckets you can pretty much map up your data against. And then when it comes to execution, again, you can use the tools you have. So we help many customers take that data from Marketo and integrate that with the website. Typically, we use the GTM and data layer, the Google Tag Manager. We also work directly with the CMSs. Based on how they actually navigate the site, we can tag them as far as their product interests or affinity, or you can even tag them based on, say, like work with your backend. They can just simply identify and flag visitors. But what I'm going to talk about, whether it's backend, front end, client side, offline, there's typically one or more ways you can pull that data together and start building up those segments. Again, happy to talk about it. At the end we'll share our emails, but happy to walk you through how that's done. Once you have that in place, it opens up a lot of opportunities, especially for the website. Now, typically if you use GA or Adobe or those type of popular tools, they don't necessarily present you a view of your web behavior filtered by first-party data like customer or prospect or based on like stages. So the beauty about doing step 1 is that step 2 allows you then to actually see the opportunity firsthand and see how they behave differently. How does a customer behave with the homepage versus, say, a prospect or anonymous visitor? This allows you to make the argument that, hey, I'm underserving my key segments because, as you can see here, they're not engaging with this hero because it doesn't have an offer that's relevant to them. So this helps the broader organization understand and internalize what this means. And then lastly, when it comes time to take action, again, because it's already available in GTM, in the data layer, via different sources, it allows you to then also quickly wire it up to personalize. And then this example here, I'm using Google Optimize because it's free. You can pull it off. You can target by, query parameters, first-party cookie values, data layer values, all things just talked about. So this allows you to then start either do A/B testing or experiments like Ben talked about, or just doing personalized experiences where it's always on. For my customers, they always get the customer homepage banner. Prospects get this banner. Or you can make it more specific, like I mentioned earlier, about tying to an offer. So if they sign up for a demo, I want to get them the next level of content, next best offer. But either way, there's many straightforward ways to do this with the current tools you have. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, buy new tech. Some tech may help. Again, Funnel can help in this way as well, but you can do this use case with the tools you got, with just some little creativity, some MacGyver type creativity, and just some know-how. And that's something I'm happy to help share with you guys after the fact. So my final thought is, now that you've done all this and wired it all up, the last thing I want to share from my current clients and years of learning is one simple technique to really improve conversion rates. So you might have the data to target them, you may have the technology to kind of reach them when it matters. I want to share this a simple marketing technique that we've seen do very well with improving form completions and conversion overall. And I kind of call it rethinking the form experience. Because I think, again, we talk about doing all this work. At the end of the day, what you're going to do is have them click on a button and you're going to take them to a form, some of these forms that you see here. And that ultimately is not going to convert as best for you. And the reason why is that we all know no one wants to complete a form, right? It's not enjoyable, given my PII information, and immediately have to deal with the fact that I'll have to deal with a sales conversation. So what we have seen with our clients, what we've helped implement, and what we're advocating for in this webinar is thinking about interactivity as an alternative to just walking into the form. So instead of a form like this, an interactive form where I don't lead with questions about what's your name, first and last, give me your email. Right? That's of no interest or value. I'm not helping them get to a better research or discovery phase. By just changing how you introduce people to the form experience, we've seen a lot of positive success. An example here, we're asking them what features they care about first. Then we're asking about, you know, their profile. In your world, it could be what role are you in? Are you a CMO? Are you a marketer? Are you an IT person? It could be, you know, your SMB or an enterprise. But the whole idea is you don't start with the PII. You start with questions that are easy to engage with, interact with, and allow them to get started and commit to the process. Because we all know people don't like to read or write online anymore, but they still click and scroll and tab. So we're going to take advantage of that behavior, that new behavior of users today. And the best part about this is that you still get to collect information on your form. As you see in the example here, the third screen has the same exact question. I'm actually getting more information. I'm actually collecting their intent around product interest and their profile. So I'm actually getting better quality data, which I can use for more use cases, as well as getting higher conversion rate. And I'll show you a case study at the end of this in the next couple of slides. But I always want to reference this. The reason why I think this is proven time and time again is that I look to the lead gen industry as the best validation of this. So, you know, I came from the mortgage space in the 2010s. We looked at LendingTree as the, you know, compare for lenders and win. That has always been a great selling point. And their whole business based on, you know, lead gen arbitraging, right? How to generate lead gen at scale. And they are also the example of the most extreme version of interaction before asking for the form. So if you go to their site today, you know, they'll pick, you know, you pick which of, you know, 6, you know, product types you have interest in. And that's the first question. But guess what? They ask 16 plus more questions. And only after like the 15, 16th question, I'm asked simple questions like, you know, what's my income? And then even with all these screens, they have not asked for my name. The reason I bring this up is that their whole business is based on lead gen and revenue generation. So the fact that they have embraced this to the extreme. Now, granted, the product lends itself well to that. But you saw in another example, small, simple question that allows the people to raise their hand, self-engage, we've seen been effective. Again, two current client examples we're working with. They were seeing double-digit lifts in terms of form completion. So this is actual form conversion, not just, you know, do they start the process. This is actual form conversion. We've seen it work on pricing pages. We've seen it work on regular demo request forms. We've seen it work on acquisition pages. In the end, it's a better way to introduce lead collection. So, you know, so this is where we see a lot of opportunities, is marrying intelligent first-party data collection, targeting your users by stage. Really, summarize it here, you know, target by stage based on intent, target the right offers, and make it interactive. Now, if you think we put these things together, I think you'll see the best way to take your static website and make it a stage-based revenue generation platform that's activated by first-party data. So, you know, I can't advocate enough that learn from my 20 years of failing and, you know, and trials and tribulations that, you know, this path, especially for the B2B and demand gen side, really allows you to really take advantage of the data you have and put it to use in the best possible way. So with that, I want to thank you for the time and kind of hand it back to Ben to kind of wrap us up.
Awesome. James, thanks for doing that. So we're going to offer you guys a special offer, which is a free pipeline review strategy session. This is a 90-minute call where we can go over your end of Q2 and Q3 marketing goals, as well as the budgets that you've had for the last 60 days. This gives us a good sense of the types of approaches you're taking to try to hit your pipeline and revenue goals for the rest of the year. And what we want to produce as our deliverable is an outline of tactical steps so that you can reallocate your money towards bettering ROI around your campaign, so that you can leverage these types of strategies that you're learning on this session or this webinar or some of the other things that we may talk about. So this is available till the end of the month. If you're interested, please reach out to us at marketing@interruptmedia.com, and then we'll reach out to schedule a time for you. But we wanted to make that available at no cost for anybody that's attended here. Well, let's move to the Q&A. I know we've got a few minutes left. There have been some folks that have already chimed in with questions. If you haven't yet and want to, please go ahead and drop your questions in the question box, and we will certainly ask them if we have the time. But there's a question from Sally, and it looks like it's to both of us, James. The question is, what is your recommendation for the tests, for a test I should run? I'm sorry, what is your recommendation for the first test that I should run on website and not on website. So James, maybe you take a recommendation, you take the website one and I'll take the non-website one.
Sure. Maybe, how about you go first and
I'll go
follow
first.
up with the website?
So I would say if you're running a webinar series, you should actually test your presentation and run the webinar again and see if you can't do a better job the next time. When people give presentations like the one we're giving now, they learn all sorts of things about how they frame their messaging, their storytelling, and the questions that get asked by the folks that join the webinar are really useful insights on maybe something that was or was not covered as well as it should have been. And because these types of sessions are really here to introduce ideas and concepts and to overcome objections, a lot of times marketers just will run a webinar and never do it again. We would strongly recommend that you test running an encore webinar 2 days later so that you can actually try your webinar again with people that maybe didn't show up the first time and see if you can do your webinar better that way. And then if you're going to use the webinar for on-demand content, you now have two content types to test to see which one converts the best. So hopefully that's a unique one that maybe y'all weren't thinking about, but James, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah. So going back to the last couple of slides, if I had to pick one test, I would explore rethinking how you present the forum experience. The reason why I say that is that we've seen good success, but more importantly, if you get success for your organization, it's something that can potentially scale across a number of different campaigns and channels. So that has a lot of upside. Now, granted, you may not be able to I don't know if you have testing responsibility for your organization. If you do have, I think that has a lot of potential to move the needle. Again, one of our clients, they did it in one flow, it worked, and guess what? They took more and more flows through it, more and more different offer types through it, and it's for them at least, it's always been paying off. So they've, in a short order, they've gone from traditional static forms to interactive form capture, and they've seen double-digit lift across, I think, almost every channel they've kind of run this across. So it definitely has a lot of potential to scale and kind of impact the bottom line revenue.
Great. James, this next question is for you, and this comes from Rob. Rob asks, what kinds of people manage this kind of workflow? Would this be my digital marketing manager?
Great question. I think it really varies based on how the organizations are structured. Typically, what we see, on mid-market type companies, you have someone who may own growth or demand, growth, and it includes digital. So that if that person has that responsibility, they typically, I call this, conversion or growth, typically how people think about this category, that usually falls into them. So I think that is typically the profile that fits on a mid-market. Enterprises, it may be more specialized, it may have an actual optimization or experimentation team. Typically in either scenario, especially if we're going to work on the first party data side of it, we're going to partner with their marketing ops, group, which, is also going to empower a lot of those capabilities. But typically it's how you've organized today and who does who controls the website and who's the one responsible for generating growth, typically through experimentation or campaigns on the website.
Sure, great. David asks, what do most people miss when launching their own project? And James, I think that do.
Yeah, I think they miss not having, well, one, they don't figure out how to execute. They take an academic exercise, like these are things I want to do, like a nice buyer journey mapping exercise or some type of other activity. I think what they miss when they start is that you need to think about what you can get done. So that's why I always focus on the most practical, common sense way of what are you doing now? How can we apply some of these same principles and do it with some first party data powering that use case? So I think people need to be realistic about how their orgs execute and align to that approach. Otherwise, you might have great ideas, but they're all academic. They don't really see the light of day. So that's the primary thing. And also secondly is focus on ideas that move the needle. Like going back to my ABM example, when I often work with people, they often talk about I want to focus on my target accounts, and I want to focus on this. I think it's a great idea for like email especially, but it may not work as well for the web, where you might only get 10 visitors that qualify in a given day, or you might have only a certain percentage of pet traffic that qualify for the industry. You just don't get scale. So looking at those realities helps you to find activities that will work and that have value.
I would say from my perspective, and James, tell me what you think here. I think a lot of times when people run test plans, they don't document. And so I think a lot of times the learnings that come from a lot of this testing and personalization ends up staying in somebody's brain, and it's hard to actually communicate those findings to the broader team or the company. And so I would recommend, if you have some type of a wiki, to have like a section or a space in your wiki where you can post the tests that you've run in your wiki. What worked, what didn't, what are the learnings, and what are kind of the next steps. If you don't have some type of a wiki where you post that type of stuff, then I would maybe have like a Google Doc or some type of a spreadsheet that walks through what the experiment was, why you were doing it, the outcomes and the learnings. That way, the institutional knowledge can be distributed more easily than you just having all of this stuff in your head. James, would you tend to agree with that when you guys are working with clients?
Absolutely. Like, it's so hard to get stuff started, and it's even more disappointing when you can't really collect that learning and share within the organization. So like I said, the common thing we see is the stakeholder who's driving the program leaves, and you're left with nothing. Like for us, what we do with our clients, we actually set up a dedicated like Asana or Trello board, which captures not only the results and learnings, but all the assets, all the operational comments. So you have like a living history of what you did, what you learned, and decisions that were made at the time and the context around that.
So this is going to be the last question. This comes from Scott. Scott asks, how do I position this to my manager so that I can get the approvals I need to incorporate? And James, I'm going to take this first. I think, Scott, it's really important to set the right types of expectations for what you're trying to accomplish. Whether it's from the data side, like with my marketing operations hat on, or from the performance side, which is James's world. If you can set the right type of expectation and say, hey, we're going to try this out. This is the steps that I'm going to take in order to try this out. This is the the workflow. This is the amount of bandwidth it's going to take for me. And here's the range of outcomes. But I'm leaning, if I do it this way, I think it's going to net out in a certain way. I think you're going to be setting yourself up for success. I think if you don't do that, then you're going to have a hard time getting buy-in from senior level management. And again, it's really important to set the expectation, because the last thing you want to do is run some tests that don't go as you expect, although they may be really good learnings, and you're not given the continued bandwidth to keep testing, because that's ultimately what I think this is going to require. So, James, curious to see what your thoughts are around this.
No, great points. The only thing I might want to add is, figure out what they care about, your boss or your boss's leadership team, and propose that test or ideas that will help move their KPIs. So, you, instead of bringing the idea you care about most, think about what is it that you can help them solve for, he or she, that allows you then to, instead of asking them for help, you may be able to show a way you can help them, and they might want to champion you, because you might be the best path they have to proving that this idea has merit or that this KPI can be moved.
Awesome. Want to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope you found the session useful. If you wouldn't mind filling out the follow-up survey that's going to show up right as you leave, we'd really appreciate it. James, nicely done. And we hope that everybody will join us for another future webinar, or reach out to us if you have any questions regarding Funnel Envy or Interrupt Media. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ben.